Obviously, these threats are real.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're trying to raise awareness. How do we know our own government's taking them seriously?
So we talked about this a little bit before. There's an enormous amount of energy being devoted to this by the government. Really high-level personnel, first of all. Unity of effort, which is sort of the watchword of the modern era of governmental cybersecurity efforts. Unity of effort is so important to this administration. They have not just one, but two very, very senior people inside the White House pulling for that, okay? Both of them formers from the National Security Agency, Ann Neuberger and Kris, both of them extremely, extremely capable.
Both in the government and the private sector.
Yes. And Jen Easterly at DHS CISA, extremely capable, also from NSA back in the day. So extremely capable people in very senior positions. And then an enormous output of presidential documents, executive orders, national security memos, imposing real requirements on government agencies. The executive orders and NSMs that have been issued here, you almost need a computer just to keep up with all of the requirements. I would hate to see the horse blanket of a spreadsheet of all the do-outs that are, but it is incredible, including in acquisition regulations and in government cybersecurity requirements.
Stepped up law enforcement.
Yeah, it's
your old bailiwick. Yeah.
The federal BI did something quite aggressive with their search warrant authority. They actually got authority to go out and remove malware from privately held computers without the consent of the people who own and operate those computers across multiple jurisdictions.
Sometimes
and
not
state
even
lines.
knowing where the computers are or who has them, right?
I think it's a little unclear because I've never seen the return. That's it's not, in a way, you can see the idea of it, which is that this is a bad piece of software. It has only bad purposes. You didn't put it on your computer yourself, or if you did, you're a bad guy. But and they want to get it off, make a copy of it so they can use it in the later prosecution and also make your computer safe. But the normal, comfortable way that might get done, you'd think, is the FBI comes knocking on the door. Hi, you may not know this, but we think you have malware, and then there's a conversation.
Except that doesn't work if there's tens of thousands.
It's too many, yeah. And they did make a public campaign to try to educate people, and patches were pushed, but still in all, they knew there were several infected computers out there, and so they just deployed, the Kraken or whatever, and it removed the malware. That's an aggressive thing, and they got some heat for it. But it's an example of the energy level, the commitment level, the focus that's being brought to bear on this. There was cybersecurity incident reporting legislation finally enacted earlier this year, where certain companies that see certain incidents of certain types are required to tell DHS CISA about them, tell the government about them, so that countermeasures can be adopted. So there's just a huge amount of energy activity here on the defense side, on the law enforcement side, from your government in general. And that's going to continue, I think, indefinitely, because the threat is certainly not getting any less.
Yeah, and just to reinforce that, I think people have an idea that because the United States government is so vast, has so many employees, has so much money, that they can just, to badly paraphrase a current movie, do everything all the time. Not so. As we've learned in our careers, there are a relatively limited number of things that an entire administration can focus on at one time.
Yeah.
And this is clearly a focus of it. Another example is, as we speak on October 9, 2022, the Department of the Treasury has just issued proposed new regulations requiring cyber insurance companies to impose a lot of requirements on their insurance, possibly in return for some kind of big federal monetary cyber backstop if there's a catastrophic attack.
So the government will pursue direct regulation by passing laws or writing regs, literally, particularly for those who are otherwise subject to the government's jurisdiction because they're defense contractors or they're other government contractors. But they also do things where they can to move the market.
Yeah.
And insurance companies, if they start imposing requirements because of some benefit that's available to them, if they do this, then chief information security officers take notice, and then boards of directors take notice, and then all of a sudden Delaware, judges are taking notice, and
it creates a
things
lot
go
more
downhill.
flexibility than a federal regulation, because the insurance companies can be much more nimble and agile and responsive to the market.
And the market will think of maybe clever ways of otherwise
That a
satisfying
regulator
the
might not have.
requirements.
And so earlier we plugged David's textbook on national security law, perhaps not for airing in this podcast, but one might want to review the massive article with a specific legislative proposal that I authored 2 years ago on this very topic, which
Tell us about it, Bryan.
may not be the inspiration for this federal government activity, but the whole idea is that cyber insurers can move more agilely and can influence their customers more than a government regulation can.
Yeah.
So check it out.
Definitely.